The Song of Songs. More people have walked in since I got up here, I think. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. One man wrote, "The book has attracted the attention of some of the best intellects and spiritual minds of the believing community. I want to know how he knew you guys read this." Someone else said, "In the entire world there is nothing equal to the day on which the Song of Solomon was given to Israel. All the writings are holy, but the Song of Songs is the most holy." We have heard of the Holy of Holies. That means there's holy things, and then there's this one, which is holier than all the rest. We've heard of the Lord of Lords. There are lords, and then there's this one Lord, which is above all the rest. None of the others even compare. Here is the Song of Songs. This is the greatest song ever, according to this text right here. This was written by some dude. You guys can't see that, huh?
I can't see what you're...
How about now?
Now it's better now.
Right. In AD, he was born in AD 50, but this was written around AD 90, or said around AD 90. And the discussion was, in the late first century, about whether the song should remain in the canon, because it was in the canon. And in fact, this guy is going on to say, what he's saying is, look, nobody has ever disputed this. Why are we disputing it now? And so that basically laid to rest the discussion about whether it should be in the canon. The Bible is not silent about this topic. If you're reading and you come across the Song of Solomon, you read it, taking it at face value, the words, the pictures, everything there, you recognize this is not the only time the Bible talks about this. Can you think of other passages that talk about this? Anyone?
Well, like when, this is terrible, I forget his name, but like with Rachel, like when he saw her, is that the sort of thing you're thinking of?
Hey, that one works.
Why can I not think of his name?
Jacob, yep. Mm-hmm.
Jacob.
He said, wow. Yep. Come on, guys. All right, here's one. 1 Corinthians 7, right? 1 Corinthians 7 talks about this. So we're going to go here and read it. My purpose today is not to make everybody feel uncomfortable. My purpose today is to edify us from God's Word. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1. Now concerning the things about which you wrote, it is good for a man not to touch a woman, but because of immoralities, each one is to have his own wife, and his own woman, and each woman is to have her own husband. The husband must fulfill his duty, that's literal, fulfill his duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The ESV has something about conjugal rights there. The King James Version, this is a euphemism, must fulfill his duty. Well, we know what that's talking about. He doesn't say it, he says something else. That's called a euphemism. The King James Version applies a euphemism to this euphemism, and it says render due benevolence. And that is not what the word benevolence means. Not at all. But they don't want to talk about it, okay? That's why they did that. And so, render due benevolence, fulfill your conjugal rights, so on and so forth. Keeping your finger here, this is not the only time that this is really explicitly addressed. Exodus 21, if a man takes another wife, woman, if he takes to himself another woman, he may not reduce her, that's the first wife's, food, Exodus 21 verse 10, If he takes to himself another woman, he may not reduce her food, her clothing, or her conjugal rights. If he will not do these three things for her, then she shall go out for nothing without payment and money. So this is talked about here and there. Don't worry, I'm going somewhere with this, by the way, other than just to say this is talked about. Back in 1 Corinthians 7, the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does, and likewise also the husband has authority over his own body. It does not, but the wife does. Stop depriving one another, except by agreement for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer, and come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. More about that much later, Lord willing. But this I say by way of concession, not of command. Yet I wish that all men were even as I myself am. However, each man has his own gift from God, one in this manner and another in that. But I say to the unmarried and to the widows, that it is good for them if they remain even as I. But if they do not have self-control, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. And that is ambiguous. What do you mean burn? Well, we probably have some idea what he means. And if you don't control yourself in that burning, you will burn if you're not forgiven. Okay? So it's probably talking about both. But here, there's this burning passion. The girl, the woman, the female, says, sustain me with raisin cakes, refresh me with apples, because I'm lovesick. It doesn't matter when that's happening. The idea is she's burning with passion. Okay. There's one passage. Anybody else think of anything else? I have another passage.
Well,
Yeah.
I can't off the top of my head think of words. I'm beating myself up. Drink water from your own cistern.
Proverbs 7.
Yeah, there you
Wait,
go.
Gary, we're going to get there?
Okay. all
Yeah,
right.
no, that's right. I asked him to tell me a passage and I yelled at him.
Yeah. That idea, it's in Proverbs. It's in the idea is also spoken in Proverbs, kind of at the other. How do I want to say this? Like the harlot, she spreads her bed with all this lovely stuff and does all these things. Well, turn it around. The wife is
Right.
to be doing that.
Save that thought if
Okay.
you can, or we'll bring it up again. I will bring up a similar point to it at the very end, only because it's in timing in the end. So I'm thinking of 1 Thessalonians. You might have a passage. 1 Thessalonians. I'm actually grouping these passages. I have a method to my madness. Yes. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Verse 3, this is the will of God, your sanctification. Okay, he states that your sanctification, then he'll qualify this 3 times. That is, that you abstain from sexual immorality. There's number 1, don't go messing around. Number 2, that each of you know how to possess his own vessel in sanctification and honor, not in lustful passion like the Gentiles who do not know God. So there's number 2, control yourselves. And number 3, that no man transgress and defraud his brother in the matter, because the Lord is the avenger in all things, just as we told you before and solemnly warned you. This right there, that one is saying don't mess around with another Christian's wife. Bizarre as that might sound, that's what it's saying. Verse 4, the New American Standard says, each of you know how to possess your own vessel. The word possess there is used 7 times in the New Testament, and this is the only place in any of your translations that it'll be translated possess. The rest of the times it is acquired or obtained. The word vessel is the same word that's used of the woman in 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 7. She is the weaker vessel. And the ESV has a footnote, the ESV Study Bible has a footnote, that this could be translated, take a wife for himself. The RSV does translate it that way. Know how to take a wife for yourself. Look, control yourself. Know how to take this is saying the same thing. It could be saying the same thing as 1 Corinthians chapter 7 we just saw, right? 1 Corinthians 7 was, control yourself. If you can't, get a spouse. This very likely is saying the same thing. Ezekiel 16. Now this will be a little bit more detailed. Ezekiel 16. This is a passage where the Lord is using extremely graphic language saying, I loved you and you deserted me. You mistreated me. Verse 6, I passed you by and saw you squirming in your blood. I said to you while you were in your blood, live. Yes, I said to you while you were in blood, live. I made you numerous like plants in the field. Then you grew up, became tall, and reached the age for fine ornaments. First you're a baby, then you grow up. Look in verse 8. I passed you by and saw you, and behold, you were at the time for love. Now we know what that's talking about. The reason he uses this imagery is because we all know what that's talking about. All of this is to illustrate what we're talking about today is a fact of life. That's what we're talking about. On one level, it's just a fact of life. Hebrews 13. Verse 4. Marriage is to be held in honor among all, and the marriage bed is to be undefiled. The word bed is added. This word is used 4 times in the New Testament. Only 1 time do we know it refers to bed. The other 3 times refers to an action. Okay? Some of our words come from that word. Okay? The marriage bed is undefiled.
You have New American Standard?
I do.
Is it? My translation, I mean, I've got New American Standard, says marriage is the word that's added, not bed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Both of those words. Yeah, I said bed is added.
Yeah.
Okay. The word is where we get our word coitus from. That is the word. 1 time in the New Testament it obviously refers to a bed. The other times, besides this, it obviously refers to the action. So they're being gentle.
Yeah, in the NIV it does say that marriage be honored by all and the marriage bed.
Yeah, again, bed is, they're using their discretion. Okay, another passage, Proverbs 5. You said Proverbs second, you referred to Proverbs, I said 7, I meant 5, although it's dealt with in 7 also. Proverbs 5, verse 15, drink water from your own cistern and refresh water from your own well. So there's a time and a place, and in this case there's a person. And it's not somebody who's not your wife. Verse 18, let your fountain be blessed. Rejoice in the wife of your youth. As a loving hind and a graceful doe, let her satisfy you. Be exhilarated. The latter part of that says, be exhilarated always with her. We have a footnote that will say, be intoxicated. The New King James Version says enraptured. Another Bible says captivated. Here is my point about this. In these latter verses that I talk about, here it's a fact of life. Here you get the idea that it's not bad. In fact,
God meant it to be something spectacular.
right. It's good. Be intoxicated by this. Rejoice. And the context is very specific. Rejoice. In fact, good. In fact, you said spectacular. In fact, it's very good. Can you think of a passage which basically connects this with being very good? I might have said that.
Genesis.
Genesis chapter 1, right?
How did he create it?
Yes. And right before that, he had said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Go out and fill the earth. Well, that includes being fruitful and multiplying and all that's involved there. So it's good. In one sense, oh, by the way, so in the song, my notes are. in the song, it had said in chapter 7, verse 1, the curves of your hips are like jewels. It's literally your round hips. Although they figured out that that doesn't sound as good nowadays. Your round hips are like jewels. Now listen, the work of the hands of an artist. Now I get that this is poetic, but the idea is God made you. God is an artist. He made you the way you are. He made me the way I am. And this is good. Remember, now we'll cruise through the text in a minute, but remember that chapter 5, verse 1, the height of the story. I have come into my garden, my sister, my bride. I have gathered my myrrh along with my balsam. I have eaten my honeycomb and my honey. I have drunk my wine and my milk. Eat, friends, drink and imbibe deeply, O lovers. You see that? Drink and imbibe. Partake of this. He's saying this is good. This is good. Okay. In fact, in a sense, no, I'm qualifying it by saying in a sense, this is the closest, most intimate, most ultimate, most complete knowledge of another person. You remember the euphemism that is often used? It's translated, he had relations with her, but the word is what? He knows. He knew her. They knew. It's all over the place. So, say it again?
Cain knew his wife.
Right. Adam knew his wife. Now, here's what I was looking for. This is an irony, one man writes. Here we are with all our high notions of ourselves as intellectual and spiritual beings, and the most profound form of knowledge for us is, and then he talks about Song of Solomon. It's humiliating, he says, when two members of this godlike cerebral species approach the heights of communion beside themselves. What do? Think? Speculate? Meditate? No. He then talks about Song of Solomon. Do they want to get their brains together? No. It's the most appalling of ironies. Their search for union takes them somewhere else. There is some truth to this, right? There's truth to what he said. I don't know if I'd say it the same way, but there is truth in what he just said. So my point is this. In this book, God created us. This thing that we're talking about is good. You said it's spectacular. Great word. It's from God. It's wonderful. It's not to be tossed about very casually, but that's because it's so beautiful and it's from God. So it is not surprising that we'd actually find a book about it in his book to us. That's not surprising. I said, when you read this, taken at face value, that's what this book is about. Well, no surprise. God says, this is good, this is wonderful. Remember, children are a blessing from the Lord, right? Well, part of that blessing is how you get the children from the Lord. So my whole point is that we have a book that on its face value is what it is about is not surprising. Now, some people will say that this is an analogy of the relationship between Christ and the church. If it is, I see zero, myself, maybe you have it, and bring it to me right now. I see zero inspired evidence of that. In fact, it comes from two things. Number one, interpreting the Old Testament willy-nilly, as in, oh, I'm starting to see Christ in everything, directly in everything in the Old. If there's a word in the Old Testament, I got to make it somehow be about Christ. Okay, that's the way they analogize things. And number two, those people, many of them will say that the simple face value explanation would be unbiblical. And so they say, no, we can't be about that. And so it must be something loftier, is what they say. I don't see it. If you do, let me know. I'd be glad to learn more about it. Gary doesn't see it. Another thing that you may have heard, and I'll stop for a second. Another thing you may have heard is that there is a triangle of people. There are three people in here, and there's one woman who's being fought over by two men. one of them being Solomon and the other being the shepherd. Maybe. I don't see it. I'm not that smart. This is tough stuff right here. In fact, everybody admits that there is so much in this book that is open to interpretation because we don't understand like 25% of the words that are used, okay? So it's just completely open to interpretation, and I'm not saying that we get to go where we want with it. I'm saying we cannot go anywhere with that because we don't know what many of the words actually mean outside of the context. And the context is a bunch of euphemisms, right? Gary.
Just on the, I don't want to summarize all this up.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the.
We can skip flags.
The closeness, the intimacy of this, the specialness, all these fantastic words
Yeah.
put together with this is, in a sense, if you kind of think the Bible as a whole, because how bad is adultery, fornication, and all this stuff spoken evil of against
Right.
throughout the Old Testament? You get to the New Testament, every sin that a man does, not other than sexual sins, is outside of the body. Sexual sin is inside of the body, because this is God's ultimate good gift,
Yeah.
if you will,
Yeah.
in a worldly sense.
Yeah.
And the other stuff is all, when we profane it,
Right.
we really mess it up.
Yeah, it is holy, it is beautiful.
Right.
In my preparation, it suddenly occurred to me that Song of Solomon picks up where Genesis chapter 2, verses 18 through 25 leave off. Right? That's Genesis chapter 2, 18 through 25. So he brings, I'll just read it. It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. And Adam saying, yes, I want a helper. And then you remember what happens. God lines up a bunch of animals. What's the point? That's not for you, that's not for you, that's not for you. And then finally he brings the crown jewel, and she stands in front of him, and he says, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. For this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become flesh. And the man and his wife are both naked and not ashamed. And then it kind of stops there and goes to the real story. But if you want to know the rest of the story, you can turn to Song of Solomon, right? Because that's where he's looking at her and says, wow! And she says, wow! And that's what the story of Song of Solomon is about.
If we look at what the world has tried to do and done with this very successfully, it's to distort it and try to trample on what God has ordained as very good between a man and a woman in marriage.
Yeah.
And the world is just trampling all over that. And you've got to be living together before you get married. You never know. You got to try out the car first. Oh my Lord, it's terrible what I can see going on out there.
Right. Yeah, and so part of our job is to take this and study it properly and put this relationship back in its proper, call to attention, its proper setting.
Remind me, you said there's so much that could be interpreted. There is no out of the book, or even in the book, but nowhere else in Scripture is, Joel 2 is explicitly fulfilled in Acts 2 because it says so.
Right.
Song of Solomon's not even referred to
Right.
in the rest of Scripture, is it?
That
So
we
far as we
understand.
can tell
Right.
at all. Okay.
Yep. But to be clear, Josephus will say, I had this quote up here a couple weeks ago, that Josephus will say that, that I'm paraphrasing, the canon was closed in the time of Artaxerxes. And he'll have 24 books. And you know that the way they order them is differently than the way we order them. You get all that. But Song of Solomon was in there, right? I don't know exactly where you were going. Right, it's not
No,
quoted.
I was just
Yep.
refreshing.
Yeah, it's not quoted in the New Testament. That's why if this is some analogy, the Lord has not let us know in any inspired way. Or even a type. It's a type. The Lord says there are some things that are types, and he uses that word type or pattern, whatever. Yes. Okay, here is Lee's outline. The introduction. We're done with the introduction. Chapter 1, verse 2 through 8 is the body. I'm not reading the whole thing. Verse 2, the woman begins. I find that interesting. May he kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. The New English Bible says, may he smother me with kisses. That's the idea. May he smother me with kisses. For your love is better than wine. I will make this point. That word love is not the same word in verse 3, the maidens love you. Okay? The maidens love you. They appreciate you. Your love is that same word in Ezekiel 16 that we just read. She's ready for love. That's what this is about. Okay. Your oils are pleasing fragrance. Your name is like purified oil. Now you've got to get some things before we go any further. I asked questions. Considering mine and his and wedding and bride, what more do these two feel? We already get what they feel about each other. That's called passion, called excitement, right? What more do they feel? It's not just passion and excitement. What else do these two feel about each other? Anyone? And I asked this question 3 times, actually. This is the second. The first one's obvious. We know what they feel about each other. He comes running.
I got the impression of respect. Anointing, that usually is a sense of authority.
Yes. Respect your name.
Yeah.
That's not about his physical looks. That's about his character. That's about who he is. So we call it the complete package, right? Good looking and honorable. Thank you. And she is too. Remember, she's a locked garden. Okay. These euphemisms saying that she saved herself for him. And in this case, it turns out to be this person. By the way, I don't know if this is Solomon that wrote it. I don't know if somebody wrote it for Solomon. I don't know if somebody wrote it for somebody else and dedicated it to Solomon. I don't know if Solomon was Don Juan. And that's the name that's used. You understand? As in, if you're going to talk about, the great lover, if you're a Jew and you're going to talk about the great lover, who are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about Solomon. Okay? I don't know. There are placeholders, there are tropes, there are ideas that repeat themselves over and over and over. They're associations. He doesn't actually mean what he says. That's what this book is about. He doesn't mean what he says. He means something else. There's something behind it. That could be the case with Solomon. I know he said king several times, but on the wedding day, guess who were king and queen? We have the same thing. We sit in this front of this table and we're king and queen for a day. These are not just new ideas. I'm not transposing modern ideas and customs back then. They're old. It could have been Solomon. I have no idea. This isn't about who. This is more about what, right? Your name is like purified oil. So this is about character. They are committed is what I was going for. They're married. Remember, on the day, they're married. That's chapter 5, or chapter 3, chapter 3, verse 11, on the day of his wedding, and then there's the wedding day, all right? They're brother and sister. Not only, so there are 3 levels here. Number 1, they're passionate about each other. Number 2, they're committed to each other is the word I was going for. They're committed. That's how they feel. I feel committed. And then number 3, this is not a relationship of, yeah, we're married.
No, there's great fondness.
Right. Brother, sister, friend. Imagine that, honey. On the way here, I'll let you know that I told Marcy that, what did I say? Your hair is falling down. No, your hair is like goats falling down out of trees. Just doing my job. I didn't tell her that her teeth are not falling out, which was a good thing.
How many goats have you ever seen? Trees.
Well, I'm just taking it all put together. Okay, so verse 4. So she keeps on, draw me after you. Now, verse 5, I'm going to skip a lot. You guys have read this. You get the idea. There is some things here that if you're not looking for carefully, you might miss, and I might misspeak. I need to be careful not to state the case too. Verse 5, I'm black, but I'm lovely. O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon, do not stare at me because I'm swarthy, for the sun has burned me. The idea does seem to be either she's black or she's been outside and she has a sunburn, which is not the coolest thing back then like it is now. Whatever the case is, don't miss how she feels about herself. She is what we call insecure.
Self-conscious.
Yes, she's insecure, right? I'm insecure. Now, it's funny, she starts this whole thing, so she's not that insecure. But at the same time, she's insecure, right? And that's life, right? Guys are the same way, but we especially see that in the more pleasant gender. Do not stare at me because I'm swarthy. Verse 5, the end of it says, I have not taken care of my own vineyard. Okay. Verse 8, Solomon, whoever it is, replies, you are the most beautiful of women. So he sees she's tender right now and he says, hey, you're the most beautiful I've ever seen in my life. Verse 9 is got to be my favorite. To me, my darling, you are like my mare among the chariots of Pharaoh. Yeah, except this is what they explain, that mares, by the time this is written, had not been used to drive chariots for 1,000 years in Egypt. Stallions had. And the mare here is feminine. You're like a female horse among a bunch of stallions. That's what he says to her, which is a compliment. He's saying, look, this is the impact you have on me, right? I see you. I like you. She's insecure. He says, I like you.
Is it where he's saying, you could have any man that you want out there, but you chose me? Is that kind of a possible?
It's in here, sure. I don't know if it's right there, you know. And there's a whole bunch of back and forth. So chapter 1 is a whole bunch of back and forth. You're beautiful. I'm beautiful. I think you're beautiful. You think I'm beautiful. This is wonderful. Chapter 2, verse 1. I am a rose of Sharon. If you read your footnotes, or read a bunch of notes, actually, by the way, the lily of the valley. Now, where have we heard that before? Actually, you've not heard it anywhere else than right here, other than the song. Based on the analogy, look down also in verse 4. He has brought me to his banquet hall. His banner over me is love. These are euphemisms. I'll let you go read them. Let me rephrase. I strongly suspect they are euphemisms. Okay? It doesn't say this is a euphemism. Okay? But, so we have those songs that are based on these, I believe incorrectly, although I enjoy the songs. She says, I'm a rose of Sharon, I'm a lily of the valley. Now, here's another one that I had to quote to you. And I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to tell you, you can go look it up. The rose of Sharon was a guess. They didn't know what the word means. So they took the prettiest flower they could think of. But that's not what it means. Now they have more information on what this word means. It just means a normal flower. She is saying, she's back to her insecurity. I'm just a normal flower. Right? I'm just a lily of the valley. I'm not the greatest thing. I'm not the rose of Sharon. And he says to her, verse 2, like a lily. So he takes what she says, yeah, okay, so you're going to say you're a lily, but you're a lily among thorns. Everybody else is a thorn. You're a beautiful flower, okay? So they're going back and forth like that. So she, in chapter 1 and 2, she's saying, where will he come and smother me with kisses? Chapter 2, verse 8, listen, she says, listen, my beloved, behold, he is coming, climbing on the mountains, leaping on the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle and a young stag, and the next thing you know, he's standing right in front of her. She said, come and kiss me. And he says, wham, I'm there. When can we start kissing? Verse 10, my beloved responded and said to me, arise, my darling. You remember this refrain that kept on coming up. Verse 7, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and by the hinds of the field, that you do not arouse or awaken my love until she pleases. That's him saying it. He says, let her sleep, let her sleep. Next thing you know, he's there, and he's saying to her, it's time to wake up. Arise, my darling, my beautiful one, come! For behold, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone, the flowers are ready, the time has arrived. Verse 12 gives you, if you don't figure out the poetry, the time is now. Okay, we can. You called, here I am. Verse 16, my beloved is mine. She's talking to him now. My beloved is mine and I am his. He pastures his flock among the lilies. Verse 3, so in chapter 2, up through chapter 3, verse 5, love is nearer. Chapter 1 is, come, hurry. He comes, and it's nearer, but we're still not there yet, right? Chapter 3, verse 6, we'll get there. Chapter 3, verse 1, still not there yet. On my bed, night after night, I sought him, whom my soul loves. I sought him, but I did not find him. I must arise now and go about the city and in the streets and the squares. I must seek him, for whom my soul loves. I sought him, but did not find him. And this is the waiting period. The waiting period. I want it already. No, you got to wait. I want it already. No, you got to wait. Verse 4, scarcely had I left them, I found him whom my soul loves. I held on to him, and I would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house, into the room of her who conceived me. Verse 6, what is coming up from the wilderness? Now, he's actually talking here, and he's looking off. Now, it sounds like he's talking about himself. Part of it is talking about his great entourage, but I believe from chapter 8 that part of it is also talking about her. So, verse 6, what is coming up from the wilderness like columns of smoke perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all the scented powders of the merchant? Behold, it is the traveling couch of Solomon, 60 men around it, the mighty men of Israel. By the way, this guy is not insecure. He's like, I'm here. All right. All of them are wielders of the sword, expert in war. Each man has a sword at his side, guarding against the terrors of the night. King Solomon has made himself a sedan chair from the timber of Lebanon. He made his posts of silver, back of gold, its seat of purple fabric, its interior lovingly fitted out by the daughters of Jerusalem. Go forth, O daughters of Zion, gaze on King Solomon with the crown, and with which his mother has crowned him on the day of his wedding. Chapter 4, verse 1, how beautiful you are, my darling. He comes up to her and starts saying, you're beautiful. That's all of chapter 4. I'll let you read that if you haven't already. Verse 16 of chapter 4, she replies, awake, O north wind, and come, wind of the south, make my garden breathe out fragrance, let its spices be wafted abroad. May my beloved come into his garden and eat of its choice fruits. I have come into my garden, now this is him, my sister, my bride. I have gathered my myrrh along with my balsam. I have eaten my honeycomb and my honey. I have drunk my wine and my milk. Eat, friends. Now here we have an observer saying, eat, friends, drink and imbibe deeply, O lovers. Okay. Chapter 1, hurry up and get here. Chapter 2, I'm coming. Chapter 3, 4, and up till right now, all right, we're here. Great. All right. What we call the wedding night. And of course, all marriages continue perfectly forever after, right? What? Well, yes. Nice one. Why didn't I think of that?
Holy, why?
Okay. All right. That's right. Okay. Chapter 5, verse 2. Whether this is a dream, whatever it is, listen. I was asleep. This is her. She speaks. I was asleep. My heart was awake. A voice, my beloved, was knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is drenched with dew, my locks with the damp of the night. Okay, he's basically saying, I'm home. All right, great. And she says, I have taken off my dress. How can I put it on again? And it's negative. Okay, the idea is, I can't. I won't. That's the idea. I won't. He says, I'm home. And she says, I don't want to talk to you. I have washed my feet. How can I? In other words, I will not get them dirty again. And we know this because she's about to get them dirty. So it's not that she couldn't, it's that she wouldn't. My beloved extended his hand through the opening, and now listen, and my feelings were aroused for him. See, they weren't before. He says, I'm home, and she says, my feelings are not aroused for you. And he keeps on being persistent, and she says no, and then finally her feelings become aroused for him. I arose to open to my beloved, and my hands dripping with myrrh, my fingers with liquid myrrh, and the handles of the bolt. I opened to my beloved, and he's gone. Talk about a letdown, right? But first it was her. Now he, for whatever reason, maybe in response to her, probably, that seems to be the idea, but now he's gone. And so, really, through chapter 8, will be her pursuing him again. All the while making declarations. Verse 16, my beloved, this is my beloved, and this is my friend. She's saying, look, whatever happened there, that's not me, right? I'm more than that. Verse 16, verse 6, where has your beloved gone? She's having a conversation, and much of this seems to be just allowing her to go on and on and on about how wonderful he is, right? Where is your beloved? Verse 3, I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He who pastures his flock among the lilies, right? So, yes, that little, whatever that was back there, that's how I take this. Maybe you got another idea? Whatever happened back there, that was just a little hiccup. And because sometimes hiccups happen, right? But it's not a permanent part of it. Chapter 7, and they're back and forth with how beautiful everybody is. You've read it. It's more than just how beautiful you are. Chapter 7, verse 10, I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me. Now verse 11, come my beloved, let us go out into the country, let us spend the night in the villages. Okay, so now they're spending the night again together. Chapter 8, verse 1, oh, that you were like a brother to me who nursed my mother's breasts. If I found you outdoors, I would kiss you. No one would despise me either. In some societies, including this one, where would the woman walk? Especially the wife. Behind. In those same societies, you know where the sister gets to walk? Sometimes right here. Does that sound backwards? Sounds a little weird. But the idea very much could be, she's saying, our society is such that I want to show the world our love, but I can't as much as I want to because society has its restraints, okay? I wish that you were like a brother to me who nursed at my mother's breasts. If I found you outdoors, I would kiss you, and no one would despise me either. Because apparently in their situation, although they're married, she is not allowed to kiss him outdoors because if she does, people will despise her. And she's saying, I don't want that. I want more.
So if that was the culture then, how much more shocking the poem then.
Yes, right. Yep. They read it every Passover. Along with Ecclesiastes.
Oh.
And nobody knows why. Including me. Right? They don't have any history of this is the decision for that. Verse 8, I would lead you and bring you into the house of my mother who used to instruct me. I would give you spiced wine to drink from the juice of my pomegranates. Let his left hand be under my head and his right hand embrace me. I want you to swear, O daughters of Jerusalem, do not arouse or awaken my love until she pleases. So there's that same refrain again, bringing basically an end to the body, and then we go into some conclusions. Who is this coming from the wilderness? The last time we said, who is this that's coming? Or what is this that's coming? It was Solomon's couch. Here, who is this that is coming up from the wilderness, leaning on her beloved? So this is actually focusing on her. Oh, here she comes. Beneath the apple tree I awakened you. Now she is speaking to him. I awakened you. There your mother was in labor with you. There she was in labor and gave birth to you. I have no idea what all of verse 5 means. But I do get verse 6. Put me like a seal over your heart. How did they use seals back then? To indicate ownership, possession. We own each other. I own you, she says to him. like a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death. When death comes knocking, who resists it? Nobody. It's not exactly the same, but in a poem, so is love, right? Love is strong. And when it comes knocking, you cannot resist it. Love is as strong as death. Jealousy is as severe as Sheol. And jealousy isn't always negative. God has jealousy for us, right? I love you, he says. I love you so much, I love you stronger than death. Well, we're not stronger than death. Jealousy is as severe as Sheol. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. If that word actually means Lord, it's the only time in this text it says it. Many waters cannot quench love, nor rivers overflow it. There will be battles. The waves of these rivers, these many waters keep on coming, trying to destroy love. But this woman saying, I will love you forever no matter what happens. Verse 8. I have no idea what's going on here other than this guess. We have a little sister. Here's my guess. It's not worth much. Nor is it mine. You remember in chapter 1 she had said, I'm black but lovely. Do not stare at me because I'm swarthy, for the sun has burned me. My mother's sons, what are those called? Brothers. My brothers were angry with me. They made me caretaker of the vineyards. She says, look, I look this way because I'm doing my brother's bidding. So she has brothers, and they're not exactly prepared for her to be married, are they? That seems to be what is this taking. We have a little sister. She's young. What shall we do for our sister on the day when she is spoken of? In the future, when somebody comes knocking for her, what are we going to do for her? Well, if she is a wall, somebody suggests that this has to do with moral fortitude. I'll go with it. If she's a wall, I'm not going to go down any wrong. I'm chaste. We will build on her a battlement of silver. We'll make her all adorned. But if she's a door, as in she just lets anybody come and go, we will barricade her with planks of cedar. We'll take care of her. But they're not ready for her to be where she is. Listen to what she says. I was a wall, and, in case you haven't noticed it, I'm more than ready to be married. That's what she's saying. I became, in his eyes, as one who is complete. The word is peace, but the idea is complete. It may be that the brothers are saying, well, yeah, we got the sister, and sometime somebody's going to come knocking for her. And while that happened, she grew up. Verse 11, Solomon had a vineyard at Baal-Hamon. He trusted his vineyard to the caretakers. Each one was to bring 1,000 shekels of silver for its fruit. My very own vineyard is at my disposal. I'm ready to be married. 1,000 shekels are for you, Solomon, and 200 are for those who take care of its fruit. And then it ends with this closing scene of, come back, smother me with more kisses. O you who sits in the garden, my companions are listening for your voice. Let me hear it. Hurry, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of spices. Do you have any comments or questions? I have 3 points.
I have a question, and that is why people come up with the 3. And I'm actually asking, what is the You had mentioned that perhaps one of the reasons they come up with the idea that this is an analogy is because they can't bear the thought of it being anything else.
Yeah, that's a combination.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Is there something that is accomplished by interpreting 3 in here?
No, other than there are we's and he's and she's that are hard to trace. There are pronouns. Like there's
So there's some evidence there that causes some confusion, but it's not like they're saying, for this purpose, we're going to go back and make it fit.
Right. Not in that case. And actually, in neither of those 2 cases.
Okay.
I would say this. I would accept some kind of a third person before.
Yeah.
I'm kind of.
Well, sometimes you just read it and it's like, this can't be Solomon.
Yeah. Right.
And that's the primary thing that hits me that makes me wonder about that. Now, the analogy thing, I don't understand at all. But when you read it at face value, you get a lot of what I know about Solomon, I don't know if there's no sincerity here, and that kind of defeats the purpose.
Right, that's why that it does fit, but it does fit with the idea that somebody would write. I mean, who are you going to write? If you're going to plug in a name, if you're a Jewish man writing this, whose name are you going to plug in
Right,
that everybody will know?
Right.
You know,
And
for
I
that
hadn't heard
reason.
that before, and I appreciate
Well,
that
Yeah,
because
that idea is something I didn't know before somebody else. I always thought it was something solid.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. There's so much in here. I'll be honest with you. I think that I get less about this book than any other book, and I mean way less, like way less. There's, you know, I get the pictures. Yeah, okay, all right, but there's so much in there that's kind of why I mean, you read, oh, this means this means this thing, and this means this thing. Okay, maybe, a lot of maybe, probably even, but
You can tell that the translators must have pulled their hair out.
yeah, that's right.
Better.
Yeah.
Because they put all these inspired things in there. The Shulamite said this, and then the daughters of Jerusalem said this, the beloved said this. None of that stuff is inspired, but they put all this stuff
yeah,
in.
right,
So it's like, that must have drove me crazy.
Yeah.
I have the Septuagint here, the words that were here, I'm not sure what I'm saying, up there.
yeah.
Really interesting.
What are you talking about? Chapter 1, verse
Well, yeah.
2. May he kiss me with. Yes, that's another word that emphasizes that this is not about a relationship as in a feeling for one another. Not verse 2. Verse 2 is about more about activity. Okay, the appearance. Yeah, okay. She is worried. I will say this. She says in verse 7, chapter 1, verse 7, "Tell me, O you who my soul loves, where do you pasture your flock? Where do you make it lie down at noon?" And then here's her concern. "Why should I be like one who veils herself?" And what is that talking about? You remember Tamar,
Yeah.
right? Why did Tamar did this? What was she while she was doing this? What was her purpose? To be thought of as a harlot. She wanted to be thought of as a harlot. It seems very much that this girl is saying, I don't want to even look like that. A lesson would be that appearances matter. And we need to respect what is right in the sight of all men. And here's an illustration. You two stop fighting back there. There's an illustration would be, you've got a guy and a girl who are unmarried living in the same house now. Everybody who drives by that, what do they think? I mean, what do they know? Even if it's not true, you ask them, they are going to assume, and so, hey, that's something that, is it a sin? Not inherently. Living in the same, it might be really, 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 really dumb for other reasons, but it itself is not a sin, but still, I'm sorry, that we're not going to be a party to that because of the appearance it will give. Godly people say, no, I don't want to look like that. 1 Corinthians 7. This might be called young love. That's great. But 1 Corinthians 7 basically says that young love must endure. I know we read this earlier, we'll read it again. "Concerning the things about which you wrote, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. But because of immoralities, each man is to have his own wife, and each woman is to have her own husband." Now listen, the husband must fulfill his duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does, and likewise also the husband does not have authority over his own body, the wife does. Stop depriving one another, except by agreement. So the de facto agreement is, smother me with kisses. Okay, I'll go smother you with kisses. But I don't want to smother you with kisses right now. Well, the de facto agreement that you come into the wedding with is, I will smother you with kisses. We will stop by agreement for a time so that you may devote yourselves to prayer and come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you lest, because of your lack of self-control. Comments or questions? Oh dear! Wow! I hope it's a comment.
This is not to be seen as merely an obligation.
Yeah.
This is to be seen as something that God has for a married couple that is to be very good,
Right.
not as a duty that is to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that happens to people.
Yeah.
And that's happening to you that you need to really examine that.
Yeah. You can rekindle love.
Yes.
Yeah. I would hate to be in that situation. It's scary, but it's possible. It's possible to rekindle even what Song of Solomon is talking about, because it's God's purpose in marriage. Not the only, but it is God's purpose in marriage.
And the way this is phrased here is about as specific as a commandment in the New Testament. I mean, if you look at the wording there, ever gets, it has more qualifiers. There is no confusion here.
Yes.
By agreement. Well, what does that eliminate? One of you saying no.
Right.
That eliminates that. You can't argue it any other way. For a time, which means not forever. For a specific purpose,
Yes.
which eliminates all others.
Right.
And then it reemphasizes it all again by saying, so that you may, come back together here. So, I mean, we'll study things like, the head covering and kind of wonder about purpose for the angels and all, what does this stuff mean? You cannot go here and have any doubt about what the pattern is at all. There's just no wiggle room whatsoever. And that is, I mean, yes, we get those instances all the time, but this is a mighty clear one.
Yeah.
When if you're not doing that exactly, you're doing something else. You're doing something wrong.
There's zero ambiguity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Husbands and wives, rate yourselves. How do you do in conveying similar sentiments to your spouse? Is there room for improvement? I'll just make this suggestion. If you don't know what to say, open up the book of Song of Solomon and start reading it to each other. Comments or questions? Thank you for your work. We are going to move on from this.
I thought this was just your outline. You were gonna go
Yeah.
back.
No, I'm not going to cover it again. Do we have a song? Yeah. Is that you? Okay, yeah, we're going to finish there. So, Gary, please pray for us.